Listen, hey, what is area?
Oh, come on, Bryce.
Bryce, what's area? Could be length times width. Is it always length times width? No.
Oh,
How would you define area? Jordan? It's the space inside a 2D object that you were talking about. You got to be careful because when you talk about volume, it's the amount of space that an object takes up, because then you're dealing with 3D. But area, why did that? Okay, is it just slow moving? Because now it moved twice. Area. The units, when you start talking about area, is going to be square units. That's one key thing when you were labeling it. You need to make sure that you label it as squared units, because you're talking about, given a figure, I want to know how many squares can I fit in there. If we were to talk about unit squares that are of the same length or something, you want to know how many of those can I fit in that space. That's all you're doing when you're finding area. So the units are going to be squared. It could be square meters. Keep in mind that's meters. What's this? Miles. If you put miles as an M, you're going to get it wrong because that stands for meters. So any units you have, you could have square inches. Notice you say square inches, even though the unit comes on the outside of it. Sometimes people get confused and they say, oh, my answer is 4 square inches. That's actually 16 inches. So you have to be careful. It is 4 square inches or it is 4 square inches. One of those two. This has the incorrect notation when you write it that way. But those are things I see. Area of a rectangle is base times height or length times width. How many squares can you fit in that space? What is the formula for area of a square? How do I find it? Kate. It is the side squared. If you think about it, it is base times height. But what do you know about the base and the height? They're the same. So if I were to take something like 3 times 3, that's the same thing as just taking 3 and squaring it. So sometimes you could say it's base times height. You could say it's length times width because a square is a rectangle. It's a special type of rectangle, remember? We've talked about that. Special type of quadrilateral. But anyway, we're just going to take the side and square it. Given this figure right here, you get a minute with a partner. Go ahead and tell me what the area of the figure is. Here's one thing you got to be careful of. Too many times right now you've seen this and all you've had to do is find perimeter. You better read the instructions, the directions, what they are asking for very carefully. Some of you will find the wrong thing. 1 minute. 18 square centimeters. As you look at it, how many of you did that? If you did that, what's the area of this top rectangle? That would have an area of 6. And then your bottom rectangle down here has dimensions of 6 by 2, which is 12. So all of this down here is 12. If you add them together, you get 18. There's one way you could solve it. All right, how many did this? Yeah. Now this rectangle, this is the way I work through it. This rectangle is 10, 5 times 2. And this rectangle right here is 4 by 2, which is 8. Together you get 18 square centimeters. Did anybody else do it a different way? The other way you could do it is make a large rectangle out of it, which dimensions are 5 times 6. So 6 times 5, which gives you 30. And you want to take away this right here, which has a value of 12. So 30 minus 12 is 18. And your units are square centimeters. I don't care which way you do it. So you've had 3 different ways. You can either split it, take it as a whole and split it. You could split it that direction, or you could split it with the horizontal line right there. Any one of the three. All right, find the area of the shaded portion of this figure. I'll slide it. I'll give you 30 seconds with a partner. Go. Answer? 68. Square meters. All right, as you look at it, you have the large rectangle that you're going to take, which is 8 by 10. So you're going to take the 80, and you're going to subtract from it this 6 times 2, which is 12, and that does leave you with 68. Good. How do you find the area of a triangle? Jordan. Base times height divided by 2. That's the same thing as half the base times the height. Can you explain to me why that's true? Bryce. Yep, take a square or a rectangle. If I were to take a rectangle, the area of that is base times height, but if I were to make it into a triangle, it's half of it. So it's half the base times the height. Area for that triangle? 6. How many of you mentally go 3 times 4 is 12, and half of that is 6? You could do that, or you could go 2 goes into 4, take half of one of the sides first, but your answer is 6. In this case, there's no units given, dimensions given, so we would say units squared, because it is area. What if you happen to have an acute triangle? The other one was a right triangle. Oh, why did that do that? Uh-oh. All right, we have a right triangle. You take the base times the height. When you have an acute triangle, the height is found inside. It's always that perpendicular distance. What is the area of that triangle? The area of the whole triangle is 6 again. So it's just 6 square units. Where's your height if you have an obtuse triangle? On the outside. If you have an obtuse triangle, the height is still the perpendicular distance going from the apex or the highest point down to the base. You may have to extend that base to see that. So the height of this triangle that we have is still 3. So it's going to be 4 times 3 divided by 2, and your answer is still 6 square units. But just keep in mind where that height can land, and don't let it be a side length right here. If I told you this was 4, it's not 4 times 4. The height is that perpendicular distance. Find the area of this right triangle. Dimensions are in feet. You get 30 seconds with a partner. Go. William, your answer? You said it correct. 24. 24 square feet. When you have that right triangle, something that may be helpful is to take this, go ahead and envision it rotated. Now your base is 6 and the height is 8. It's a lot easier to look at it in that format and say that it's 6 times 8 divided by 2, instead of trying to come up with, given this figure, saying that your base is 10, and if your base is 10, you're trying to figure out what that height is right there. You don't know trig functions yet that I know of in order to calculate what that height is. So that's why you want to rotate it and just think of your base and your height as the 2 legs of a right triangle. Question? Okay. The next one. How do you find the area of this figure? I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, who would split that into 2 smaller figures? Maybe I should say, who would not split that into 2 smaller figures? Can you get to this? Yes, you can. By sketching this right here. Then you're going to have this rectangle whose dimensions are 6 by 4. So you would take 6 times 4 to give you 24. Then you're going to have this triangle, but within your triangle, what you need to find, what's the height? 4. And this piece right here would be 4. So you would have 16 divided by 2, which is 8. So the total area would be 32 square yards. Note card, if you don't know this. I told you I'd let you know when you need the note card. Here's a formula that could make this faster. If you happen to go to something like UNL Math Day or something like that, where they are asking you to find an area and you want to know how people from Brownell Talbot can get it real quickly. You've never been around Brownell Talbot. The way they can get it real quickly is because they know a formula that may get you to the answer quicker than sitting there trying to think about. You got to think about what's that number. You got to remember this one and add them together. Here's a formula. It's for the area of a trapezoid. Would you agree that the quadrilateral described is a trapezoid? Yeah, here's your trapezoid. Your trapezoid is found right here in blue. It's a quadrilateral with one pair of parallel sides. The formula for area of a trapezoid is this. It's equal to base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. What are your bases? These are the parallel sides that exist. You are correct. They are 10 and 6. So if I wanted to set this up quickly, the sum of the bases, you add the two bases together, you get 16. You take it times the height, which is 4, and you divide by 2. What's half of 16? 8. What's 8 times 4? 32. There's the area. Sum of the bases times the height divided by 2. I would not take 16 times 4. I would reduce it first. Multiply smaller numbers. You don't have to do a 2-digit and a 1-digit multiplication. You know 8 times 4. 16 times 4, you could do that if you want. If you know that it's 64, that's okay. And half of that's 32. So area of a trapezoid, something good to know. Area of a circle, do you know that one? What is it? Pi r squared. Pi times radius squared. That doesn't mean the radius times 2. Remember what 4 squared is. 4 squared is 16, not 8. 3 squared is 9, not 6. Common mistake that I get. So if the radius of a circle is 3 centimeters, find the area of the circle. Draw a picture if you need to. What information did I give you? Radius. The radius is 3. Find the area of the circle. It's pi r squared, which is pi. The radius is 3. 3 squared is 9. You can just leave your answer as 9 pi. Units? Square centimeters. 9 pi square centimeters. All right. What happens when you get to something like this? I'm going to change this just a little bit. I'm going to stick a pi in there just so the calculation is going to be easier. The area of a circle is 25 pi square meters. They want to know what is the radius of the circle. What's formula for area of a circle? Pi r squared. We divide both sides by pi. Okay? That means the only difference is that r squared has that value of 25. So what is the radius? 5. You have to take the square root to get rid of the square. The radius is 5 meters. The radius would be equal to 5 meters. Working your formula backwards. If I just put 25 there, it was going to make it kind of, you're going to get a radical that has fraction involved. It's not going to be fun. All right, this right here. Find the area of the figure. So far, you've been doing perimeter. And this curved piece has been like 2 pi because it's only half the circumference. Be careful now, that's not going to always happen. Find the area of the figure. Lines that look parallel are parallel. Dimensions are in inches. Try using the formula for area of the trapezoid. If I use the area of a trapezoid, what's the sum of the bases? 12. 5 plus 7 is 12. Times the height, which is what? 4. It's the diameter of your circle. Sum of the bases times the height divided by 2. Half of 12 is 6, and the area of the trapezoid is 24. Now, what about the area of that semicircle? Pi r squared. But it's only half of it, so you want to divide by 2. So it's pi. 2 squared is 4, and you divide by 2. So what's it leave you with? 2 pi. What is the area of the figure? Polygon piece to non-polygon piece. Can I group those together and say it's 26 pi? No, please don't do that. Units, square inches. Can you give me an idea of about how much it is? 30.28. That's what it's going to be exactly. This right here is 3 times 2, 6. Add, you get 30, but 3.14 times 2 is 6.28. So it's 30.28. But you have an idea. What's that figure? Parallelogram. It has 2 pairs of parallel sides. Do you know the formula for area of a parallelogram? If you don't, you might want to write it down. Area of a parallelogram. Ooh, is the wind picking up? Sounds windy out here. All right, area of a parallelogram. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take my parallelogram, and I'm going to chop off that triangle right there. If I chop off that triangle and move it over here, what figure do you see? A rectangle. So what's the formula for area of a parallelogram? Base times height. Now keep in mind, what is your height? Your height is this distance right here. This is not your height. Don't use the slant height. If they told you this was 7 and this is 10, and this piece right here is 5, your area is 50, not 70. Make sure you use the height, not that slant distance. Trapezoid. We already talked about a trapezoid. And before, it might have been easier to think, oh, I have a square and a triangle. But what happens when you get into one like this, and then you got 2 triangles you got to find, and you got to find the rectangle in between? You can still just use base 1 plus base 2 times the height, divide by 2. Sum of the bases times the height, and divide by 2. Area of that trapezoid. Trapezoid. Okay. Trapezoid could look like this, where you might think 2 triangles in a rectangle. It could look like the ones we just did, which were more like that. Different ones you can have. So you had that formula done already. What fit shape? Trapezoid. Add the 2 bases together, take it times your height, and divide by 2. All right, so this one, 30 seconds with a partner. Find the area. What shape is it? Trapezoid. Sum of the bases. So I want to add these 2 numbers together, which gives you 24 times the height. What's the height? 5 or 4? 4. Times the height and divide by 2. You either need to take 24 times 2 or take 12 times 4. Which one's easier for you? So take 2 into 4 2 times. What's 24 doubled? 48. I don't care which way is easier for you. Units, don't forget to square your units. 48 square meters. Question? Lesson set 8. I will tell you this much.